Close your eyes and take a deep breath. You are home now, and the world outside can wait. Welcome to another episode of Z in History. A Scottish lord met 3 strange women on a foggy heath. They told him he would be king. The prophecy worked its way into his mind like a splinter that could not be removed. This is the story of Macbeth, a good soldier who did a terrible thing because he wanted to believe that fate was on his side. He spent the rest of his life trying to hold onto a throne he had stolen in the dark. The fire is burning low and the wind is picking up. Settle in and let the story of Scotland's haunted king unfold. Chapter 1. The Battle in the Fog. The battle started in the fog and ended in the blood of a man Macbeth had never met but was paid to kill. It was a strange thing, fighting for a king you respected against a traitor you did not know. But that was the life of a Scottish thane in those days. You wore your lord's colours and carried his banner and swung your blade until the other side stopped swinging back. Macbeth was good at it, better than most. The king had noticed. The fog rolled across the field and men appeared out of it like ghosts, swinging and shouting and dying in the grey light. Macbeth stood at the centre of it all with his blade red and his breath coming hard. He did not flinch when the traitor came for him. He did not hesitate when the moment came to end it. He was a soldier, and soldiers do what they are told. The battle ended with the traitor's head on a spike and the king's army victorious. And Macbeth walked through the carnage with the kind of quiet that follows a storm, feeling nothing but the weight of his own arms and the cold air in his lungs. The king rewarded him with a new title and a handful of words that made the other thanes nod with approval. Macbeth accepted the honor with a bow and said all the right things. But something was already stirring in the back of his mind, something that had nothing to do with the battle and everything to do with the road ahead. Chapter 2. The 3 women on the heath. On the way home from the battle, Macbeth and his friend Banquo crossed a stretch of empty land covered in heather and mist. The air was damp and the ground was soft under their boots, and the horses moved slowly because the path was hard to see. That was when the women appeared. 3 of them, standing in the fog like they had been there all along, waiting for someone to walk past. They were not like any women Macbeth had ever seen. Their clothes were strange, and their eyes were old, and their voices seemed to come from somewhere other than their mouths. They spoke to Macbeth first. They called him Thane of Glamis, which he was. Then they called him Thane of Cawdor, which he was not yet. Then they called him King, which made Banquo laugh and Macbeth go very still. The women spoke to Banquo next. They told him he would not be king himself, but his children would be. Generations of them, a line of kings stretching into a future that Macbeth could not see. Then the women faded into the fog the same way they had appeared, and Macbeth and Banquo were left standing on the heath in silence, each of them holding a question they did not know how to ask. Macbeth laughed on the outside, but on the inside something had shifted. The seed of the prophecy had been planted, and it was already putting down roots. Chapter 3. The King's Arrival. King Duncan arrived at Macbeth's castle on the same day. A messenger brought news that the old Thane of Cawdor had been executed for treason, and that Macbeth had been given the title in his place. The first part of the prophecy had come true. The women on the heath had known what the king would do before the king had done it. That meant the second part might also be true. Macbeth felt the weight of that thought pressing down on him as he stood in his own courtyard, watching the king dismount from his horse. Duncan was an old man with grey hair and kind eyes. He trusted his thanes the way a father trusts his sons. He smiled at Macbeth and praised him for the victory, and said that there was no man in Scotland he trusted more. He walked into the castle with his hands open and his guard down, and Macbeth walked beside him with the prophecy burning in his chest. It was the highest honor a king could give, staying in a thane's castle. But honor felt different when you knew what the women had said. The feast that night was loud and warm and full of laughter. Duncan sat at the head of the table and told stories about the old days and drank more wine than he should have. Macbeth sat at the other end, nodding and smiling and thinking about a crown that was sleeping in the same building as him. Chapter 4. The Letter and the Plan. Macbeth wrote to his wife the night after the king's men arrived with the new title. He told her everything about the women on the heath and the prophecy, and how the first part had come true before the ink was dry on the letter. He did not tell her what to do about it. He did not need to. Lady Macbeth read the letter in her chamber and understood immediately what was being offered. Her husband was a good man, too good. He would hesitate and second-guess and talk himself out of greatness. She would not. She met him at the door when he arrived and told him that the king would not leave their castle alive. She said it plainly, the way a person says something that has already been decided. Macbeth hesitated, just as she had known he would. He talked about loyalty and honor and the debt he owed to the man who had given him everything. She listened, and then she told him to be a man and do what needed to be done. There was no arguing with her. When she had made up her mind, he knew that. He had always known it. She had a way of taking a messy situation and cutting straight through it. And the thing about marrying a woman like that is that you eventually stop trying to change her mind and start helping her carry the weight of whatever she decides to do. He agreed. He did not sleep that night. Chapter 5. The Knife in the Dark. The castle fell quiet after midnight. The guests had drunk their fill, and the servants had retired, and the torches had burned down to embers. Macbeth walked through the dark corridors, with a dagger in his hand and a heart that was pounding so loud he was sure someone would hear it. He saw a floating dagger in front of him, a vision that was not real but felt real enough to make him stop and stare. He reached for it, and his hand closed on nothing. It was the heat of the moment, he told himself. The pressure of what he was about to do. He reached the king's chamber and pushed the door open. Duncan was asleep, his grey head resting on the pillow, his hands folded over the blanket. He looked peaceful. He looked like a man who trusted the world to take care of him. Macbeth raised the dagger and brought it down. Once, twice, the king did not wake up. It was over in seconds, and the silence that followed was heavier than the noise that had come before. Macbeth stood over the body, with blood on his hands and a strange calm settling over him. He had done it. There was no going back now. He walked back to his chamber with the dagger still in his hand, passing the guards who had been drugged by Lady Macbeth and were sleeping like the dead. He looked at his hands, and they did not look like his hands anymore. They looked like the hands of someone else, someone who had crossed the line that could not be uncrossed. Chapter 6. The morning after. The body was discovered at dawn by a servant who had come to wake the king. Her scream cut through the castle like a blade, and within minutes the corridors were filled with panicked thanes and confused servants and guards, who did not know whether to draw their weapons or stand still. Macbeth arrived with the rest of them, wearing the right expression of shock and grief, saying all the right things about betrayal and justice. He killed the 2 guards in the king's chamber before anyone could question them. He said it was because he was overcome with rage at the sight of what they had done. It was a clever move. It was also a mistake. Macduff, a thane from the north, watched the whole thing with narrow eyes and a tight mouth. He did not say anything, but he noticed the king's son Malcolm fled to England that same day, afraid that whoever had killed his father would come for him next. His flight looked like guilt to some people and wisdom to others. Either way, it cleared the path for Macbeth to take the crown. The thanes gathered, and the crown was placed on Macbeth's head, and he sat on the throne that had belonged to the man he had killed the night before. He smiled and thanked them, and felt the weight of the gold pressing down on his skull like a hand that would not let go. Chapter 7. The Crown That Burns. Macbeth was king, but the crown did not sit comfortably. He could not sleep. He could not eat. He saw shadows moving in corners that were not really there. He trusted no one, not even the thanes who had bowed to him, because if they had bowed to him, they would bow to someone else just as easily. The only man who knew the truth about the prophecy was Banquo, and Banquo was still walking around with the knowledge that his own children would be kings someday. That made Banquo dangerous. Macbeth sent men to kill Banquo and his son Fleance as they rode back to the castle at night. The men did their job well enough. Banquo died on the road with his hand on his sword and his blood soaking into the mud. But Fleance escaped into the dark, and the prophecy about Banquo's children was still alive in the world. Running through the forest with a boy who did not know yet that he was carrying the future of Scotland in his blood, Macbeth heard the news and felt nothing close to satisfaction. Banquo was dead, but the threat was not gone. Fleance was out there somewhere, carrying the bloodline that the women had promised would rule. The crown was on Macbeth's head, but it felt like it was burning a hole through his scalp, and he realized with a cold certainty that there was no number of killings that would make him feel safe. Chapter 8. The Ghost at the Table. Macbeth held a feast that night to celebrate his coronation. The hall was full of thanes and their wives, and the tables were heavy with food and drink, and the torches burned bright enough to push the shadows into the corners where they belonged. Macbeth sat at the head of the table with his crown on his head and a cup of wine in his hand, playing the part of a king who had earned his throne through courage and fate. Then Banquo walked in. Not the real Banquo. The real Banquo was dead on a road with his throat cut. But something that looked like Banquo walked through the hall and sat in Macbeth's chair, and only Macbeth could see it. He stared at the ghost with his cup frozen halfway to his mouth while the thanes watched their new king go pale and start talking to an empty seat. His wife tried to cover for him, telling the guests that he had fits sometimes and it was nothing to worry about. But the thanes exchanged glances, and the warmth in the room turned cold. Macbeth shouted at the ghost to leave. The ghost stayed. Macbeth shouted again, and the thanes shifted in their seats, and Lady Macbeth dismissed the guests with a tight smile, and the feast ended in confusion and whispers. The king was haunted. That was the word that spread through the castle that night. The king was haunted, and haunted kings did not hold onto their thrones for long. Chapter 9. The Second Visit. Macbeth went back to the women on the heath. He found them in the same place, standing in the same fog as if they had never left. He demanded more answers. He demanded certainty. The women saw something in his face that they had not seen the first time. The first time he had been a soldier coming home from a victory. This time he was a king who had killed to get his crown and was afraid of losing it. They gave him 3 more riddles. They told him to beware Macduff, the thane who had watched him with narrow eyes on the morning of Duncan's death. They told him that no one born of a woman could harm him. They told him that he would be safe until Burnham wood came to Dunsinane. Then they showed him a line of kings stretching into the future, and the last one looked like Banquo. Macbeth understood. The children of Banquo would rule. The prophecy was still alive. He left the heath with a strange mix of comfort and dread. The riddles made him feel invincible. No one born of a woman could harm him. That covered everyone. But the vision of Banquo's line haunted him more than the ghost had. He ordered Macduff's castle attacked. He would leave no threats alive. The killings would continue until he felt safe, even if that meant emptying Scotland of everyone who had ever looked at him sideways. Chapter 10. The Wives and the Walls. Lady Macbeth began to fall apart in ways that no one could fix. She walked the corridors at night with a candle in her hand, talking to herself about blood that would not wash off. She rubbed her hands together in her sleep, over and over, trying to clean a stain that only she could see. The doctor watched her from doorways and said there was nothing medicine could do for a conscience that had been broken. The way hers had been broken, Macbeth did not have time to notice. He was too busy ordering more killings and fortifying the castle and staring at maps of Scotland, while the thanes who had once supported him began to drift away. Dunsinane Castle became a fortress, with the gates locked and the bridges raised. The people inside it were prisoners as much as they were residents, and the air was thick with the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. The news came that Macduff had fled to England to join Malcolm, the murdered king's son. Macbeth ordered Macduff's castle attacked anyway, and his wife and children were killed in the raid. It was a pointless cruelty, the kind of thing that a man does when he has stopped thinking about consequences and started thinking only about revenge. The news of the massacre spread through Scotland like fire, and the thanes who had been wavering finally made their choice. They chose to stand against the man they had crowned. Chapter 11. The Forest That Moved. The English army crossed into Scotland under the command of Malcolm and Macduff, and the thanes who had abandoned Macbeth joined them along the way. The army was large and growing larger, and it marched toward Dunsinane with the kind of purpose that comes from knowing you are on the right side of history. Macbeth watched them come from the walls of his castle, counting the torches and calculating the odds he did not really have. The army stopped at Burnham Wood, the forest that stood between them and Dunsinane. Malcolm gave the order. Every soldier cut a branch from the trees and held it in front of them as they marched forward. From a distance, the forest looked like it was moving. The branches swayed and advanced like a tide of green and brown, and the messenger who brought the news to Macbeth was white-faced and shaking. Macbeth heard the words and felt the ground shift under him. The women had said he would be safe until Birnam Wood came to Dunsinane. The forest was moving. The impossible was happening. He stood on the wall and watched the branches come closer and felt the last shred of his confidence crumble into dust. But he did not run. He had come this far by fighting, and he would end it the same way. Chapter 12. The Man Who Was Not Born. Macduff found Macbeth on the battlefield, standing alone among the bodies of the men who had died trying to defend a cause they did not believe in. The two men faced each other with the smoke of the burning branches around them, and the sounds of the battle fading into the background. Macbeth told Macduff to leave. He did not want to fight. He knew what he had done to Macduff's family, and he knew that facing that man with a blade in his hand would be facing the full weight of every choice he had made since the night he killed Duncan. They fought. Macbeth was a soldier, and Macduff was a soldier, and the clash of their blades was as old as time. Macbeth started to tire. Macduff did not. Macbeth tried the prophecy. He told Macduff that no one born of a woman could harm him, that he was protected by fate itself. Macduff paused and told him that he was not born of a woman. He was cut from his mother's womb before his time, and the prophecy meant nothing. The words hit Macbeth like a blade in the chest. He understood now. The women had not been protecting him. They had been leading him toward a cliff with a smile on their faces. He dropped his guard for a second, and that was all Macduff needed. The blade went through, and Macbeth fell to the ground, looking up at the grey sky of Scotland, with the crown still on his head and the weight of a kingdom he had destroyed pressing down on him for the last time. The crown was taken, and the thanes knelt to Malcolm, and the line of Banquo waited in the shadows for its turn to rule.